Good afternoon. It's Friday the 25th of July, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. My co-host in the studio today is Patrick Henningsen. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
It's great to be with you, Mike.
And journalist Mark Anderson joins us by video link from the United States. Now, later in the programme, we're going to be discussing the new impact of the newly enabled Online Safety Act. Mark will be taking a look at the UK's upcoming pandemic preparedness exercise. And Patrick and I are going to be taking a look at Tulsi Gabbard's release of documents related to Russiagate, but we're going to begin today with Gaza. And yesterday, Keir Starmer released a statement about Gaza. It appeared on X, amongst other places. But actually, just a week or so ago, Patrick, or a few days before that, there was a further statement, a joint statement by the UK and a number of other countries.
There is, and you read through these statements, Mike, and it's exasperating at this point, and all we get really is this: we condemn, like no action taken, a lot of condemnations, and again, same here, Mike. Group of 25 countries here, some Europeans, including Australia, same again. We condemn. We don't see the S word in there anywhere. Do you know what the S word is? Is sanctions. We don't see sanctions there. Still condemning Russia. Still doing all that carry on.
Still sanctioning Russia.
Still sanctioning Russia. But for Israel, nope, it's just it. I guess the crimes that are being committed in Gaza don't rise to that level of Western condemnation.
Apparently not. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a second. But let's go back to Starmer's comments or Starmer's statement yesterday. He began by saying this: the suffering and starvation unfolding in Gaza is unspeakable and indefensible. While the situation has been grave for some time, it has reached new depths and continues to worsen. We're witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe. He spoke about an emergency call with E3 partners. And this demonstrates once again that the key foreign policy grouping in the UK is the E3. That's France, Germany, and the UK. And this is, of course, is as Defence Union continues to be rolled out in the EU. He went on to hint at a two-state solution, once again, with language directly addressing the inalienable rights of Palestinians to statehood. And sure enough, around the same time, one E3 leader, Emmanuel Macron, announced that France was going to be recognising a Palestinian state later this year, perhaps when it's already too late because the Palestinians will already all be dead.
So it's an announcement of an announcement.
Right. That's right.
I thought he had actually inked it on paper.
No,
I guess not.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And, if what we're saying here seems cynical, it's because it needs to be considered in the context of what else was going on. Because as Matt Kennard pointed out here, just before Starmer released his statement, quote, he sent a UK spy plane over Gaza to collect intel on its starving population for Israel. It was literally in the sky over Gaza when he posted it. That's Starmer. Starmer has sent one over Gaza for Israel pretty much every day since he became Prime Minister. Now, also of note in Starmer's statement is the fact that Israel is not named at all. So, no attribution for what's going on. Okay, he's saying it's a humanitarian disaster, but there's no blame and no attribution.
And definitely no mention of genocide. That's for sure.
Absolutely. That is true. Now, on Wednesday, Jeremy Corbyn tweeted a response from the Middle East Minister, Hamish Falconer, on the question of an inquiry into Britain's role in Israeli war crimes. The response is unsurprising. The answer is no. So the response says, opposes the Gaza brackets independent public inquiry bill because, amongst other reasons, the use of sovereign base areas by the UK and allies is in line with international humanitarian law, he claims. The letter claims no lethal weapons have been transported to Israel, but it says nothing about intelligence or targeting data, which is being given to Israel.
Yeah, which is a military support, effectively, for carrying out war crimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in the meantime, of course, the use of the Terrorism Act continues to become even more totalitarian, with the arrest a day or two ago of John Farley at a Palestine demonstration. I think that was in Leeds, for holding a sign based on a Private Eye cartoon. So here's what Ian Hislop, editor of Private Eye, had to say about it on LBC.
Well, he took a joke, which is very obviously a joke. He blew it up, put it on a placard, went on a march and got arrested. on the grounds that he was a terrorist. And he tried to explain to the police that this is a joke from a satirical magazine. Quite sad that the police hadn't actually heard of it. That was pretty disgraceful. But then they handcuffed him. They put him in a van. They took him away, and then they let him out. I mean, this is a retired headmaster, who was there not with Palestine Action, with Palestine Solidarity, completely different, not a prescribed organisation. And under these ridiculous rules, he ends up getting arrested. It says, what sort of Palestinian actions, you see, it's a play on words, do we find acceptable? We don't find acceptable people throwing red paint at warplanes. We do find acceptable shooting people who are starving in a queue for aid.
I mean, Patrick, the thing is, Ian Hislop is right in everything that he says there, but it's the sort of incredulity bit that I don't quite get. He still can't get it to grips with the fact that actually what we're living through is not democracy anymore. He thinks that there's something weird about it, that it's laughable, that it's that the Labour government is making fools of themselves. They're not making fools of themselves at all. They're bringing in a draconian totalitarian regime, and Hislop doesn't seem to want to acknowledge that.
Maybe he doesn't, but maybe he's also just basically playing to maybe any remnant sensibilities, democratic constitutional sensibilities that might be somewhere lingering in the hopes that they might emerge and bring sanity to this madness. So I can see where Ian Hislop's coming from here. Maybe he's just, suffering from cognitive dissonance, because it is, for a lot of people in the mainstream, this would come as a shock to them what's happening. For us, maybe not so much, because we've been covering it so diligently for so long.
Right.
But for them, maybe it's a shock.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to just sort of end my part of this report with this short clip from an interview of Foreign Secretary David Lammy by ITV correspondent Shabab Khan, which absolutely demonstrates the sheer hypocrisy of Lammy and, in fact, the entire British regime at the moment. Let's just have a listen to this.
Palestinians have been driven out of roughly 85 to 86% of Gaza's territory. There's now 2 million people in a 20 square mile radius. I just want to quickly read you a quote. Gaza will be entirely destroyed and the Palestinian people will leave in great numbers to third countries. Do you know who said that?
You tell me.
So that was said by Bezalel Smotrich, who's a minister in the Israeli government. I'm going to read you another quote. Permanent forced displacement is a violation of international law. Do you know who said that? That was said by you, Foreign Secretary, yesterday in the House of Commons. So when you've got Israeli ministers saying quite openly that they're willing to violate international law, and that's by your definition, why don't you take them at face value and suspend all cooperation until you know for sure they won't do that?
Let's be clear. We have got no free trade discussions going on with Israel. We have sanctioned Israeli ministers. This war must come to an end. I'm very, very clear about that, and so are our other foreign ministers. When I look at the children who are being killed, waiting for food, all of this is egregious. We have asked the Israeli government to think again. We've told them that their aid system isn't working. We've told them to stop prosecuting this war and this conflict, and we're absolutely crystal clear now that this war must come to an end.
I mean, that to me, that was just an incredible exchange. Patrick, first of all, he didn't know the quote from the Israeli minister. He didn't recognize that. Secondly, of course, he was completely dumbfounded by that being put in juxtaposition with his own quote from yesterday, because he was giving a statement in the House of Commons on this yesterday. And then he came off with that lame rhetoric at the end, not mentioning genocide, actually not condemning any of it in any way, really. So, I mean, what can we say about that? It's just sheer hypocrisy.
It's more, you condemn the situation, but you don't actually condemn Benjamin Netanyahu. He says, we sanctioned Israeli ministers. What, really? Have they? I mean, I need to know the details of that, because they haven't sanctioned Benjamin Netanyahu, and he's the head of the government. He is ultimately the one responsible, as is the defense ministers, Yoav Gallant and the current defense minister, who are both indicted in the International Criminal Court, which, wait a minute, is Britain a signatory to the International Criminal Court? I believe they are, to the Rome Statute.
Right.
So no condemnation from David Lammy about that situation, that America is sanctioning the ICC punishing them for indicting Netanyahu. That's an incredible situation, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. But in the meantime, Israel and Ukraine, what's going on there?
Well, it's just to show the farce of it, Mike, the comedy of it all. This is a clip. The Israelis visited Kiev, and this is from the press conference there, and a lot of righteous indignation from the Israeli foreign minister here. Let's roll this one.
What happened yesterday in Belgium, the arrest of 2 Israeli soldiers, is a turning point.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the wrong video.
Yeah, that's from the Hind Rajab Foundation.
Right.
That's for a later story. If we just make a note,
right, okay,
on that, we can come back to that.
We'll come back to that.
And we'll move on. If
do you want to show this this clip?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, let's go ahead and show it.
Play that, please. Yeah.
We condemn Russia's strikes against civilians. We call for a durable and lasting peace which ensures security for Ukraine. Israel is supporting Ukraine and its people. We were the first nation to open a field hospital in Ukraine. We provided generators, food, water, and winter equipment. 2 weeks ago, I instructed my ministry to provide potable drinking water systems to areas in Ukraine that lack clean water after being hit by Russian attacks. It will be done very soon. We send experts to help with PTSD and resilience. We helped Ukrainians injured in the war with the recovery process in Israel. We stand with Ukraine and its people.
So the hypocrisy clearly doesn't just remain with the British. It's just off the charts.
I mean, what can you say? I mean, that is, it shows what a total farce this is. The Israeli minister saying we're going to bring clean potable water to the Ukrainians. Meanwhile, they're laying siege to the people in Gaza now for the better part of 2 years, and shooting them as they're queuing up for food. I mean, the front of the chutzpah.
Yeah.
To use a Yiddish term, the chutzpah is just off the charts.
Yes. So in the meantime, what has the British Board of Deputies been doing?
Well, on to Hislop's comment made on LBC, LBC presenter being targeted, James O'Brien, who has been very outspoken against the Israel genocide in Gaza. Let's bring this up. He's being targeted right now by the Board of Deputies of British Jews. The Board of Deputies also went after Jeremy Corbyn and others. This is one of the main organs of cancellation in British politics and media. And they're saying here, and this is a statement they put out on the 22nd of July, we are urgently seeking a meeting with senior executives following the completely unacceptable and highly offensive comments made by James O'Brien on his LBC show today, broadcasting such a transparent falsehood and demonizing the British Jewish community at a time when anti-Semitism in this country is at terrifyingly high levels, must have clear consequences. LBC should apologize and take Mr. O'Brien off the air, a.k.a. sack him. This is Andrew Gilbert, Vice President of Security, Resilience, and Cohesion at the British Board of Deputies of British Jews. So not cohesion in the media, though. He wants to sack O'Brien here. And this is a comment weighing in here, of course, the great journalist Jonathan Cook saying self-appointed British Jewish, quote, leaders insist that all criticisms of their Jewish community, the one that supports Israel's genocide, are a blood libel, quote unquote. How? By showing that they can get anyone who allows criticism of them, like LBC's James O'Brien, sacked. Well, if this has apparently forced James O'Brien here to make an apology, this is the Mail online here. Basically, LBC host James O'Brien issues an on-air apology after reading out anti-Semitic message from a friend. So he's recounting a comment made by a friend of his about Shabbat schools. So within the Jewish community, and that maybe discrimination, whatever, is indoctrination, all this stuff from a young age, sparking a raft of complaints. So Ofcom got brigaded, Mike, with a raft of complaints. Is that organized brigading? Are they anonymous complaints to Ofcom? I mean, how transparent is that system?
Right.
We've seen this before, by the way.
Yes.
With many other examples. So here it is once again. End result, I don't think this is very good for press freedom.
Indeed, or freedom of speech. Okay, well, let's move across the channel to Belgium then. And what's been going on there with arrests, apparently, of IDF personnel?
This is unbelievable. So this story just broke yesterday, and I personally was shocked when I read this. Shocked in I think a positive way, because something actually happened. We'll bring this up on screen right now. This is from the Belgian press. Obviously, I've translated this into English here. The 2 Israeli soldiers suspected of war crimes in Gaza arrested in Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland's a big music festival here, and we'll look at how this actually happened. This is a first in Europe. 2 Israeli army soldiers present in Belgium to attend the 2025 edition of Tomorrowland, an electronic music dance festival, questioned by Belgium federal police regarding their possible involvement in war crimes committed in Gaza before being released. And how did they actually get identified? This is interesting. They were recognized in the crowd after flying a flag of the Givati Brigade, a notorious infantry unit of the Israeli army. Now, these are soldiers who boasted online about the atrocities they've committed, the schools they've demolished, the homes they've destroyed, and going through people's personal belongings in these ruined houses, and boasted about it across TikTok and Instagram. And one of the organizations who has mounted this legal challenge and who have put the pressure on authorities in Europe is the Hind Rajab Foundation. Now, we have a statement from their chairman. We'll play this. He's going to explain the significance of what happened this week.
What happened yesterday in Belgium, the arrest of 2 Israeli soldiers, is a turning point. It is a turning point because for the first time, a country not only acknowledges jurisdiction over war crimes committed in Palestine without having any direct link to these war crimes, but also moves and arrests Israeli soldiers. Israeli soldiers have never been arrested anywhere. This is the first time in history that Israeli soldiers are arrested for war crimes committed against Palestinians. For that matter, not only Israeli soldiers, no Israeli ever, soldier or not, have been arrested for war crimes against the Palestinian people, notwithstanding the fact that Israel has been committing these war crimes and these crimes for more than 77 years.
Obviously, that's an edited version of the full statement. It's on his X account. If you do want to see the work of this, is unbelievable, this organization, what they have done in the last few months. The Hind Rajab Foundation, go visit them on X and look at the work they've been doing. It's unbelievable, catching and identifying, or helping to catch and identify Israeli war criminals, soldiers in the IDF, specifically using their own social media posts that have incriminated them for international war crimes. And by the way, some of this evidence is also in the International Courts of Justice in the genocide case against Israel. So again, more damning evidence. And here's the legal organization also working on this as well. This is the GLAN, the Global Legal Action Network, London and Galway, Ireland as well. So Anglo-Irish effort here for human rights and challenging states like Israel and those who aid and abet it. So very interesting.
Okay, now what has Mahmoud Khalil been up to?
Well, do you remember the activist from Columbia University in the United States? His name was Mahmoud Khalil. He then was kidnapped, apprehended by the Trump administration, by Marco Rubio, who called him an enemy of U.S. national security, and were in the process of deporting him. He's a Palestinian a master's student who had graduated legally in the United States, married to a woman with expecting child. They bundled him out anyway. And so he won his case. And you haven't heard much fanfare about that. We heard a lot about his apprehension, but no press coverage about the fact he won his appeal. So he is free, he's out, and he is trolling Donald Trump. Here he is in Washington right now. He's gone to lobby Congress here. This is Mahmoud Khalil. And what he's up to, well, we'll take a look at what he's up to. There he is in Washington, D.C. right now. And his priority is to urge U.S. legislatures to stop the U.S.-funded genocide in Gaza, says Khalil. He's trying to stop mass starvation as Israel blocks entry of food supplies, forcing Palestinians to crowd at aid hubs where they are being fired upon by Israeli soldiers and American contractors who have already killed more than 1,000 starving Palestinians. Okay. And by the way, all of this is denied by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, naturally, of course. So isn't that interesting? So yeah, he's out, and he's a very, very good spokesperson on this issue. He's very articulate. He's already been through the ringer. So I think this is going to be a problem for the Trump administration, that this guy is on the street, as it were, and doing what he's doing. So I think this is going to make a big difference in raising awareness and pressuring Democrats, especially. As far as Republicans go, it might be a lost cause for the moment, but definitely there's some movement with some of the Democrats on the issue of Israel's genocide in Gaza.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, Mark, let me welcome you to the program. And Matt Gaetz has, he is now a television presenter, I guess. What's he been up to?
Well, this is very interesting. Good day, guys, and UK column viewers. Matt Gaetz, of course, yesteryear was a Florida congressman. And as Patrick and you and I, Mike, have talked about, he was sort of coaxed or cajoled, you might say, out of his House seat. Possibly and probably because of his skepticism toward the Israeli state. Thomas Massie has managed to hang on. We don't know how much longer that'll last, but I'm calling this Matt Gaetz's rebirth of sorts. He's on One American News, The Matt Gaetz Show, and it also talks about what appears to be, at least tentatively, Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, his paradigm shift. I put a question mark there on purpose. And what's basically going on is Huckabee had quite a tizzy, you might say, about Israel limiting or completely blocking Christians, particularly evangelical groups, from even entering Israel in the first place. And this is amid Huckabee's announced concerns and visits to a Catholic church in Gaza that was hit by the IDF reportedly, and the old St. George Church in the West Bank, which apparently was desecrated by Israeli settlers. And Huckabee, a longtime ardent, devout Zionist, pro-Israel all the way, apparently is having a little bit of cognitive dissonance. But let's let Matt Gaetz talk about this a little. Not many of us have heard him as a journalist, so he'll kind of lay the groundwork, and I'll go from there.
Is Israel an unwelcoming place for Christians? A new look into correspondence between U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee and the Israeli government raises questions about whether Christians are being mistreated by Israel. Huckabee alleges that's what's happening. The ambassador sent a letter to the Israeli Interior Minister accusing Israel of blocking Christian groups from entering the country. As a private citizen, Governor Huckabee personally led Zionist Christians on such tours. Now, Ambassador Huckabee initially met with the government of Israel to plea for the Christians who wanted to come and enjoy the Holy Land. But those pleas were ignored. Now Huckabee is threatening reciprocal punishment against Israel and their visa seekers wanting to come to America. He cited harassment and negative treatment of Christian groups. The nerve of Israel to demand America's weapons and money, but then refuse our touring Christians is astounding. About 3 billion people on the planet Earth tie their faith to the geography around Israel. And I believe everyone needs a little more of the golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated.
Very interesting indeed. So Matt Gaetz is making some headway as a journalist, much farther than I suppose he would have gotten anymore as a House member. But as I kind of felt would happen, there would be some damage control to some degree. And sure enough, this next slide shows that happened. The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, Huckabee again is the U.S. ambassador to Israel, dated 21 July. There was some backpedaling. But then there's some other things to talk about regarding Huckabee that show he's still kind of in a quandary, but the backpedaling consisted of this. This is what he wrote. After meetings with the Minister of the Interior with the help of Prime Minister Netanyahu, the issue concerning visas for American evangelical organizations has been fully resolved, he claims. Upon arriving in Israel as ambassador, I learned that the changes in the process were creating delays, costs, and significant burdens with paperwork. After meeting with the Minister of Interior, we thought the problem was settled, but organizations continue to have issues. I informed the PM's office, Prime Minister, of the problem, and I emphasize this, and pointed out how detrimental it was to the relationship of the State of Israel with the American evangelical community. A very sensitive thing, because if the Israeli state were to lose that support, it would be a paradigm shift at another level. Now, I didn't have time to get a certain slide up, but the American Conservative very recently published a very thoughtful article, and it quotes Huckabee as saying a number of things. It gets into the desecration of the old St. George Church in the West Bank and the apparent IDF shelling to a degree on the Holy Family Church in Gaza, the last Catholic parish there. And what Huckabee was quoted as saying by the American Conservative, he said, it's unacceptable, talking about these attacks on the churches. It's unacceptable, he writes, to desecrate a holy place, and he called it an act of terror and a crime. And then Huckabee said that those things should bring harsh consequences. In other words, not just condemnation, but consequences. And the American Conservative goes on to comment about this situation, to make such an argument 2 days after Israel struck the only Catholic parish in Gaza, a crime that Catholic leaders condemned, including Pope Leo, is more than brave for Huckabee. It's a radical position for him to stake out, and one that has unmistakable ramifications that could spell the quick undoing of Israel's whole campaign against Palestinians in Gaza. So the American Conservative went so far as to say that. So Mike Huckabee, you might say, has had some cognitive dissonance. How far it will go and how long it will last is hard to say at this point. But if Huckabee were to swim the other way on the tide, that could have a potential domino effect that could weaken that key evangelical support of the State of Israel. It might not happen, but it's important to acknowledge what happened at this point and keep an eye on this situation. I think that's good for now, guys. There'll be some links in the show notes that will add additional details.
Thank you, Mark. I'd be interested in getting both your comments. To start with you first, Patrick. Is that genuinely somebody seeing the light, or is this diversionary to keep people looking the other way from what Israel is actually doing in Gaza?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. Personally, I just think it's sad that this will garner headlines and controversy, but it does take focus off the actual genocide that's happening. But to be fair, maybe this is the only way to get Americans interested in the issue, or at least get an entry point, is to mention Christian. So Americans will get outraged, especially on the right, if there's Christians that are somehow being denied rights, but they don't care if Muslims are being gunned down and mowed down wholesale. That's not a problem. But for the issue, maybe this is a positive thing. Somehow they'll sort of help find their moral compass. I don't know. Not holding my breath. Cautious optimism.
I'll make a quick note.
Yes.
Huckabee did visit both the site of the Church of St. George and the Holy Family Church. He went there, he talked and met with Palestinians and with other people. And so he did get boots on the ground for himself. He is a pretty eloquent Christian, figure, you might say. It would be very interesting if he were to see the light on this, because, again, the effect that could have might be irrevocable and could go a long ways in changing the context. But it's a tentative thing right now. We can't say for sure.
He's also, Mark, someone who is on record as soon as he got sworn in, said there is no Palestinian people. They don't exist. There is no West Bank. There's only Judea and Samaria. So, hopefully, Mark, I hope that him meeting actual Palestinians will change his mind on that. I really do.
Well, look, let's we'll maybe talk a little bit more about this in extra. So thank you very much for that, Mark. Now let's move on. If you like what the UK column does and you'd like to support us, have a look at the front page of the website there. There's a nice big button for you to click on. And I want to say thank you once again to everybody that is supporting us financially. We do need your ongoing financial support. But if you can't support us financially, then please do share material you see on the UK column website. Share it as widely as you possibly can. Very briefly, tonight at 7 p.m, the weekly banter with Charles, myself, and Jerm will be going out on the germ warfare slot. So do join us for that. And the discussion that Brian had with Lynn Lopez Salcedo, that went out yesterday at 1 p.m. It's available on demand now on the website. I just want to clarify something I said on Wednesday. I was mistaken to say that she was actually Israeli, but she is obviously Jewish and is very rapidly changing her views on the Zionism question. Tonight, Patrick, we will be in the Seven Stars Hotel in Totnes for a presentation by Andrew Bridgen, introduced by you.
Yes, and this event is already sold out. It was sold,
is it?
Yes, it was sold out on Tuesday. So if you did get tickets, congratulations. If you didn't get them, unfortunately, no seats left.
Right.
So and hopefully we'll see some familiar faces there. I'm sure we will.
Okay, okay, let's move on then. And just before we do. Don't have a graphic for it, I do apologise, but of course I should mention the UK Column on Location event taking place on the 18th of October in New York. Tickets going on sale on Monday, just after the weekend, so we'll have much more detail for you on Monday during the news programme. So keep a lookout for that. Now let's come on to the issue of Tulsi Gabbard and the director of National Intelligence, because she has released some files and some infographics on Twitter here, on X rather, on the question of Russiagate. So Americans will finally learn the truth, she said, about how in 2016 intelligence was politicized and weaponized by the most powerful people in the Obama administration to lay the groundwork for what was essentially a years-long coup against President Trump, subverting the will of the American people and undermining our democratic republic. That's what she said. Now, attached to the posting on X was an infographic that you saw on screen there, but that was followed by a series of other follow-up posts with infographics on them. So let's just have a look at some of these then. In the first, she points out that the original intel assessment was that Russia had no involvement with the 2016 election, and the last of these assessments was published on the 7th of December 2016. The following day, the president's daily briefing was delayed because apparently Obama had asked the Intelligence Committee to reassess the situation, and basically he was effectively instructing them to find that Russia was interfering with the election or had interfered with the election. And then by the 9th of December, the Intelligence Committee decided that they were prepared to produce an assessment as per the president's request. Now, that same day, they then leaked claims that Russia had interfered with the election to a compliant legacy media. And finally, she highlights that 3 years later, the Intelligence Committee, an Intelligence Committee member admitted that the Steele dossier that the UK's GCHQ head Robert Hannigan had earlier delivered to CIA Director John Brennan had led the Intelligence Committee to their conclusion that Russia was involved in election interference. Now, there's a few points to make here, Patrick. One is that there is nothing really new here in a sense, because other than it's perhaps an official acknowledgement of what investigators have been known for years. I'm talking about the likes of you and us and others that have been looking into this. But aside from mention of the Steele dossier, there's very little mention of Britain's role in all this. The focus is all on Obama. So let's just remind ourselves of the key players here. Here's Robert Hannigan, GCHQ director that we mentioned a second ago. But we should also remember, and let's look at this lot. We've got Richard Dearlove, Christopher Steele, of course, wrote the Steele dossier, the Trump dossier, Stefan Halper, Alexander Downer, Joseph Mifsud, Felix Satter, all involved in targeting George Papadopoulos.
Yeah, setting up George Papadopoulos, because that was the first original setup to create this idea that Papadopoulos was somehow in a Russian chain, a spy ring or something, that were infiltrating the Trump administration. And that's how they got the first FISA warrant. That's how the FBI pushed through that first FISA warrant to surveil members of the Trump team and the Trump transition team and the Trump administration. So that's how it all started. And there's quite a few British operatives in there on that last slide.
Absolutely, and one or two more here, because of course roughly the same time that was going on in the United States, there was also a Russiagate UK operation going on involving Sergei Skripal and the claims of so-called Novichok attacks, and what else did we have? Christopher Steele, in fact, involved with not only the Trump dossier, but the Intelligence Committee in the UK, their Russia report, and also involved in the Intelligence Committee's Huawei dossier as well. So, this was something that was ongoing. But my question, Patrick, is why is Tulsi Gabbard releasing this information now? Is this just something that was going to happen anyway, or is there something special about this time?
It just has such a partisan feel to it. It's sort of like, pushing back on getting the Dems, getting Obama. And this is basically red meat to the MAGA crowd, to Fox News, at a time when there's another story that is absolutely destroying MAGA, which is, of course, the cover-up of the Epstein scandal. And so the timing of this, Tulsi pushing this out right in the middle of the whole Epstein thing. And the implications, Mike, are serious on Epstein, because the implications are that Epstein belonged to intelligence, U.S., Israeli, or both. We don't know. Oh, and there's a third country in there that maybe Epstein is also involved with.
Could that be Britain by any chance?
I'm just thinking, because Ghislaine Maxwell, being the daughter of Robert Maxwell, and the royals involved, do you think the British intelligence are not involved in Epstein? That would be very naive, and I, of course, would not be surprised if that were the case. But, of course, we can't prove anything, can we? No one can prove anything, because this story is about to be thrown to the bottom and locked in Davy Jones's locker. So this is where we're at right now. We'll bring this up on screen here. Justice Department told that Trump in May, mind you, a couple months ago, that his name is among many in the Epstein files here. This is the Wall Street Journal. Trump is suing them at the moment. Okay, just bear that in mind. White House pushes back after reports that Donald Trump was told in May that he was mentioned multiple times in the DOJ documents relating to sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. This is somebody that Trump has disavowed, saying, I didn't know him. He's a creep. Why is everybody talking about the Epstein story? So, no one's really buying Trump's cope on this. So while all this is happening, something else just flies under the radar, Mike. Flies under the radar, and it's this story. Let's take a look at this up on screen. DOJ is meeting Jeffrey Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, this meeting happening after Maxwell initiated contact with the DOJ. Who's in the driving seat here? It looks like Maxwell's in the driving seat. Is she trying to get a plea deal here? It does look like that. Let's take a look at this. This is interesting. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. This is the power behind the throne, okay? Not Pam Bondi. This is the guy. Todd Blanche and Maxwell, they met downtown Tallahassee, Florida, at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is located inside the federal courthouse. Now, she's already been through trial. They've already had discovery. What more could they know, or would she could tell them that hasn't been told already and is not in all of the exhaustive court documents, Mike? This is getting interesting, isn't it? Let's take a look at this. And just further on from this. Today, this is Blanche, today I met with Ghislaine Maxwell, and I will continue my interview of her tomorrow. The DOJ will share additional information about what we learned at the appropriate time. That's the key words. At the appropriate time, which means potentially never.
Or perhaps when it has the most political impact. Is that possible?
Right. And the thing is, what will they reveal? What will Ghislaine Maxwell reveal to the DOJ? Just enough to get a plea deal, right? And not enough to incriminate anybody important? I think we're looking at a little bit of a cover-up here. Here's Blanche. And so President Trump has told us to release all credible evidence. If Maxwell has information about anyone who has committed crimes against victims, the FBI and the DOJ will hear what she has to say. Okay? Now, they've already booked a deposition in prison for August 11th. They're going to get a deposition from Maxwell from her prison on August 11th. So that's in 2 weeks. And then what's going to happen with that? It could get mothballed, but this is powerful leverage behind the scenes,
Right.
because the information can be used to lean on the president, to lean on Congress. There's a number of VIPs in there, a lot of important people. Okay, now would Israel ever run an espionage or blackmail operation on U.S. soil? I mean, who would think of such a thing? But yet we reported on this in 2014. This is confirmed. Bill Clinton was blackmailed by Netanyahu over the Monica Lewinsky sex tapes. Netanyahu had recordings of their sex texting and phone conversations, and he was using it to lean on the Clinton administration to release Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard, one of the most controversial Israeli spies ever. And he eventually got his release, but under Trump 1.0, I think it was Obama, right before Obama's last term. So Pollard went on. He's very pro-genocide now, by the way. But there he is. That's Netanyahu meeting with Clinton, basically telling him who's boss. I mean, this is how it went down. So we've been reporting on this for a long time. So this is the point here. There's pedigree. Israel's run blackmail operations against U.S. officials, against the president of the United States, sitting president, in the past, plus a whole bunch of other scandals, the Franklin scandal, all sorts of spy rings that were busted, the Levant affair. I mean, so just, deductive reasoning here, Mike, there's a high probability that that's exactly what we're looking at here with Epstein. But again, don't ignore or underestimate the potential of other government involvement in this as well.
Well, related, as we'll see in a second, is that the death was announced yesterday of wrestling icon and Trump supporter Hulk Hogan. And so the question is, does this have anything to do with the Epstein files? Well, actually it does. And let's remind ourselves of Hogan's part in the shutting down of Gawker, the so-called gossip website, which published a redacted version of Epstein's little black book. Here's a short excerpt from an NBC report on this.
The now defunct news and gossip website Gawker, which in 2012 published portions of a sex tape involving Hogan and Heather Clem, the wife of his close friend, radio personality Bubba the Love Sponge. The lawsuit against Gawker went to trial in 2016. Bankrolled in part by Silicon Valley billionaire and PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, who says he was outed as gay on Gawker's media tech blog in 2007, years before he was ready to make that declaration publicly at the RNC.
I am proud to be gay.
Backed by Thiel, Hogan won the case, a jury ordering Gawker to pay $140 million in damages. The company filed for bankruptcy within months, and the blog shut down shortly thereafter. Thiel, writing in a 2016 New York Times op-ed after the verdict, he funded the lawsuit because the site routinely published thinly sourced, nasty articles that attacked and mocked people. Most of the victims didn't fight back.
So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. It was a very young-looking Elon Musk there, by the way.
He was, yeah. This before he grew into the monster that he's become today. So what does Hulk Hogan have to do with Gawker? That's a good question. Well, there is a kind of an Epstein connection to this. So the Nick Bryant article, which was published in 2015. Now, mind you, Hulk filed his case in 2013 against Gawker, but things developed during that legal process,
Right.
like the Epstein story broke on Gawker. And this is where it gets interesting. Let's go to Nick Bryant's article on Gawker. How about that? First place we should look up on screen here. Actually, sorry, Mike, we got a 404 on this. It's been erased. It's been taken down like every other article on Gawker. So I thought their archive was supposed to be preserved. Anyway, thanks to the Wayback Machine, there it is. That's the flight logs for Epstein's private jet, Love Island, Lolita Express, etc. It's all there. So Nick Bryant did a couple of articles, stories, and Gawker was the venue where it now, why was it Gawker and not every other media outlet? Like nobody wanted
to touch it. Didn't want to touch it with
kryptonite.
Yeah.
Total kryptonite. So, and what was interesting after this happened, so Hulk Hogan sues Gawker, and basically for, I think, 130 or 124 million or something, and they go bankrupt. Okay, so guess who tries? There's a vulture capitalist circling to try to buy the articles in the archive on Gawker. Who is that? Let's take a look at that. Well, there he is, Peter Thiel.
So hold on. The guy who bankrolled Hulk Hogan's legal case wanted to buy the remains of what was left.
Yeah, the guy who bankrolled the legal challenge to bankrupt Gawker is now, in 2018, tried to acquire Gawker, or what was left of Gawker. Okay, so what was interesting is Thiel didn't do it in the end, but he seemed to basically give it away, and could be from one of his associates in Silicon Valley. I don't know how close this next gentleman is, but this is who ended up scooping up Gawker. There it is. That's in 2018. Bustle Digital Group, Bustle Media, CEO Brian Goldberg takes Gawker here in a bankruptcy auction. Bustle Digital Group CEO Brian Goldberg acquired the Gawker assets in bankruptcy auction, paying $1.35 million for the rights for its brand and its archives. That's the key. And its archives. So he claimed he was going to preserve the Gawker archives in perpetuity. Well, let's look at this. And according to Wikipedia, I couldn't find any follow-up on this story, but Wikipedia says, but later paused the project. So Goldberg didn't do it in the end. He didn't do it in the end. So what went on there? It's gone. It's basically gone. So that's what happened. So he paid $1.3 million. I know it's chump change for a media mogul, but with the intention to what? Bury it?
That's the question.
That's kind of like what we're looking at there. So that's an interesting back end to the Hulk Hogan story that a lot of people maybe aren't aware of, but maybe they are now. So feel free to look into that story. If anybody finds anything, let us know.
Absolutely. That'd be very interesting. Now, Mark, let's come back to the UK then. And of course, the last major pandemic preparedness exercise that Britain held was Exercise Cygnus, which happened amazingly just prior to the COVID situation. We've got a new one coming up very soon.
Indeed. I kind of got my pants caught on a nail on this one, guys. I stumbled across it as I keep an eye on the international health regulations and things like that. It's an ongoing thing, of course. And it turns out it's called Exercise Pegasus, set for this coming autumn, the fall, in the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And I have the main slides from NHS England. It might look a little excessive text-wise, but I wanted to get the main part of this on the record. People can freeze the slides to read all of it if they'd like, because this is more or less the initial report by UK Column on Exercise Pegasus. But on this one, Pandemic Response Plan, of these first two, the second one is more important. Work is underway on developing a pandemic response plan, which will set out national roles and responsibilities and how the health and social care system will respond to a pandemic occurring now for different routes of transmission. The first of these focuses on response to a respiratory airborne pandemic, something that they could claim is more transmissible, things like that. Now, moving on and just kind of cherry picking this part, these parts, the main part of the NHS England statement on this. Number 3 is also, that's their emphasis, by the way, not mine. Exercise Pegasus is a tier 1 exercise defined as a national level exercise involving ministerial participation and cabinet office briefing rooms activation. And here's the key part: when, and will take place between September and November of this year. Its key purpose is to simulate a realistic pandemic scenario, and it's the first of its kind in nearly a decade, they're saying. And you mentioned Cygnus, Mike. There was also, on our side of the pond, Event 201 in New York City in October of 2019, a drill that bared a very close resemblance, or you might say the pandemic that came in early 2020 very closely resembled many elements of that drill, Event 201 in New York. Moving on from there, these are just some other components of the NHS England statement, again, that constitute the core of this. People can freeze these and read about this later. I'll read number 6. Executive participation is set to include National Director for UEC and Operations chief medical officer, selected national clinical directors, chief nursing officer, regional directors with support from the National Program Director for Urgent and Emergency Care, and National Director for NHS Resilience, the favorite globalist word there, resilience. This will take place across 3 two-day phases in September and October. Again, a little more of a hint as to the timing and how this will be structured. Now, another important thing, and I'll just cherry pick this again, is from NHS England. They also had an appendix number 1, the core objectives. One of them is exercise decision-making processes for measures to contain, control, or mitigate the impact of a pandemic, including how relevant priority lessons from previous civil emergency exercises and outbreaks have been embedded. And there's other miscellaneous things. Some of it is quite bureaucratic. I call it bureaucratese. It's kind of a language like globalese. But in the second set of the outcomes, or the assumed outcomes, the middle one is important. I marked it with an arrow and in red. Test the strategic response, of course, they have to do this, to disinformation and misinformation. They have to control the narrative, particularly if they want to look at the possibility, if they really have a so-called real pandemic, would there be a lockdown worse than the first one? They would really have to be warding off the misinfo and disinfo so they can control the narrative if they want to do that in the event this drill were to go real. And we've seen drills going real, even going back to 9/11 in the United States. But we have a video. I came to identify this MP member, a Labor member, as Matt Western, as in country and Western, Matt Western. And he represents Leamington and Warwick in the UK. And he had a little something to say about Exercise Pegasus, among some other miscellaneous things. But it's not a long video, so let's roll that.
The action plan brings together a range of policies. We have already set out our proposals to increase defence spending. We are earmarking £4.2 billion of funding for new flood defences, £370 million to secure the UK's telecom networks, opening a new resilience academy in North Yorkshire that will train 4,000 people every year from both private and public sectors. And later this year, we will have the largest ever national pandemic exercise that will test the UK's readiness for future pandemics. We are also developing a risk vulnerability map for public servants, applying one of the principal lessons of previous tragedies, which is that all too often it's the most vulnerable in our society who are hardest hit in the case of an emergency.
Interesting, kind of a mixed bag there that he shared, but he did mention it. It looks like it's going to be a big, unprecedented drill. One thing that UK residents might want to ask themselves now is, are they seeing anything yet in the BBC? Are they seeing anything yet in the British papers and the British press hinting at this? Or is it being kept relatively quiet? That would be quite instructive. I also found, talking to James Roguski, the noted IHR pandemic treaty researcher, and some of my own research, that as a related matter, for one thing, it appears that Exercise Pegasus will have some reference to the international health regulations, because as those regulations are adopted, and that's supposed to be as of September 19th, so look at the timing, as those regulations are adopted, the Pegasus exercise would look at England's, the UK's preparedness with regard to what those regulations say. Yet at the same time, of all places, Israel, along with the United States and Italy, have, through official correspondence, they've signaled their intent to reject the amendments to the international health regulations. Now, an important point to keep in mind is you have the existing regulations, but then you have amendments, which are changes to the existing regulations. If you reject the amendments, what's left? Does the remaining body of regulations still constitute a threat to human freedom? That's an important question to ask. Just to give a little flavor of these countries that rejected the amendments, however, I have a statement or two from the Italian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Edmondo Cirielli. Here's one of them. He said this: "It's absurd and dangerous to think that Italy should cede part of its healthcare sovereignty to an organization like the WHO. And I emphasize this, the Maloney government rightly rejected the IHR. Notice that it says rejected the international health regulations, not just the amendments. That's an important distinction, and I'm hoping they're not overlooking that distinction. And then he says, which would have introduced binding measures from above without going through Parliament. And he said this, in addition, this is not cooperation. It's bureaucratic centralism in a healthcare context. Each nation's right to decide how to address a health emergency must be defended. He went on to say, this isn't narrow-minded sovereignism. That might be a new word, sovereignism. It's a responsibility of an independent state to its citizens. So this is the sum and substance of what's going on so far. Of course, I won't be the only one covering this. I'm sure you guys, Charles Mallet, maybe you, Patrick, you, Mike, will be looking at the Pegasus exercise because it's going to require a lot of repetitive reporting, but I'll keep an eye on it too. So that should do it for now.
Thank you very much, Mark. Okay, now let's stay in the UK and the Online Safety Act. And of course, the Online Safety Act's age verification requirements came into force today. Here's how the BBC is presenting it as something pornography websites have to conform to. Except, as I was hinting at on Wednesday, in fact, reporting on Wednesday, it's not just porn sites which are imposing an age verification regime on their users. It's all user-to-user services. So Reddit, as we mentioned on Wednesday, is using this organization, Persona, for age verification. And as we mentioned, this is a company which provides literally zero information about who they are, which is pretty ironic, bearing in mind collecting data is all, that's what they're all about, ostensibly for the Know Your Customer regime. And their privacy policies and disclosures provide no information about limitations on how the data is kept and how it's shared and so on. X is also using Persona for this, alongside Autonix and Stripe for ID verification. Blue Sky has announced that it will be using an organization called KWS for their age verification checking, and they're already requiring people to sign up to this if they want to use direct messaging. That's person-to-person messaging. Facebook is going to be using Yoti. And so we have a situation that all platforms, not just porn sites, are rolling this out. And so to continue to use these platforms, people will have to send their sensitive personal information to a bunch of companies, raising the risk of identity theft exponentially. And now people could, of course, choose not to use the platforms, but that isn't likely going to be the outcome. So the Online Safety Act, I would argue, is not a step forward in keeping people safe. It puts people at much greater risk. I'm going to say once again, it should be scrapped. So I'm very happy to see that the number of people who've signed the petition has doubled since Wednesday. So it's now at 67,000. And as I said then, no matter what we might think of petitions and their usefulness, I think we should be taking every opportunity to make our opinions known. So I would continue to encourage everybody to sign that if possible. And Mark, let me come back to you then for the final report of the day. And UNESCO and the United States relationship to that United Nations body.
Yes, now there's big questions surrounding this one, guys. This first slide is from the State Department, not from the White House, headlined, "The United States withdraws from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, aka UNESCO," a July 22nd press release, again, from the Department of State. Tammy Bruce issued the press release. And what's interesting here, and this also comes, this next slide, from the State Department, to get into just a little bit of the meat of that press release. Continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the U.S. national interest, they're saying. UNESCO advances divisive social and cultural causes and maintains an outsized focus on the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, a globalist ideological agenda, at odds with our American First foreign policy emphasis. UNESCO's decision to admit the state of Palestine as a member state, says the State Department of the U.S., is highly problematic. Interesting. Contrary to U.S. policy, and contributed to the proliferation, they say, of anti-Israel rhetoric within UNESCO. So pursuant to Article 2.6 of the UNESCO Constitution, the U.S., however, the withdrawal will not take effect until the end of 2026. Quite a long time. When the U.S. apparently backed out of the WHO, that won't be official, we're told, until the beginning of 2026. So there's some long time frames, and a lot can happen in those time frames, backpedaling, second guessing, you name it. Now, Reuters came out with a little something on this I'll just touch on. Trump pulls U.S. out of UN Cultural Agency, UNESCO, for a second time. Trump did that in his first term. Biden put us back in, and now the Trump administration wants to take us out again. UNESCO boss says the decision is regrettable but expected. The White House says UNESCO supports woke causes, and Israel welcomes the U.S. decision to pull out, again, because UNESCO recognized Palestine as a state. How dare they? Moving on here, this is also quite interesting. Patrick, I think you'll get a little bit of a kick out of this. UNESCO was one of several international bodies Trump withdrew from during his first term. The Paris Climate Agreement, so on and so forth, the UN Human Rights Council, although he has reinstated some of those steps, apparently. But look at the second part here that I emphasize. Trump's pick to be his UN envoy, Mike Waltz, he said recently, and apparently he said this, I really would like to double check this quote. He said this month that the United Nations needs reform while expressing confidence that we can make the UN great again. Make the UN great again. Coming from someone in the Trump White House, that sounds, to say the least, incongruent. And in this next slide, I'll be very cherry picking about this. In a post on X, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar thanked Washington for its, quote, moral support and leadership, end quote, and said that singling out Israel and politicization by member states must end in this and all professional UN agencies. So that's interesting here. Now, although the Trump administration is saying that UNESCO is too woke for comfort, and they see this as going against the America First policy, they're really not as explicit as most UNESCO critics are. UNESCO is, in the left-wing sense, in the internationalist sense, a pretty radical organization, historically speaking. Very big on LGBTQ, very big on so-called gender equality, which is a very mixed bag and rather subversive and misleading. Very big on reproductive rights, a euphemism for abortion. According to Worldometer, last year, abortion was the leading cause of death, apparently, in the entire world. So UNESCO has taken some pretty radical positions across the board. There are a number of reasons to get out of UNESCO from a conservative national sovereignty point of view, if you're skeptical of the UN Charter. But all the Trump administration has made is some vague comments about disagreeing with its social policies and that it's too woke. They could be a little clearer of why many conservative organizations have had their doubts for a very long time about UNESCO, but there's not a lot of clarity there. And the comment by Mr. Walls, and I'd like to confirm it, make the UN great again, is very incongruent and puzzling if you're a genuine UN critic. So that's what's going on there. We'll see if they actually withdraw from UNESCO. We have to wait and see, because the reality of this is a little hard to peg. So there we go.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that. Well, look, I'm afraid, are completely out of time. So we're going to leave it there for today. Plenty to talk about in UK Column News Extra. If you're a UK Column member, please stick on the live stream and join us for that. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Mark. And thank you to everybody that's watched. We'll see you, as many as possible, that are coming tonight for Andrew Bridges' discussion in Totnes. Otherwise, have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday at 1 p.m. as usual. Bye-bye.